The next speaker is Dr. Candice Junge. She's coming to us from Ionis Pharmaceuticals, and she's going to be updating us on the development program for Angelman syndrome. Candice.
Hi everyone, I'm Candice Junge and I'm the program lead for ION 582 at Ionis. This is my first year at FAST, so I'm very grateful to be here to listen and to learn from you and to hear about all the exciting advances in Angelman syndrome research. It's really a great time to be part of the community. So today I'll provide you an update on our program, but a couple of just brief disclosures. As I mentioned, I'm an employee of Ionis, and today I'll present some information on the ION 582 program, and ION 582 is an investigational medicine, so it's not approved by FDA or any regulatory body. And so today, the information I'll show is just for educational purposes. But before I dive in, I first want to thank all of you. So thank you to the community, the researchers, the scientists, the clinicians, the families especially. We really appreciate everything you've done to make all of this possible. We wouldn't be here without you. So thank you to all of you in the community, and especially the HALOS and the REVEAL participants, their families, and their caregivers. And of course, all the organizations listed here. Again, we couldn't do this without you. So some of you may already be familiar with Ionis, but for those that aren't, we were founded about 35 years ago, and we were focused on developing RNA-targeted medicines. We really have a passion for scientific innovation that will help us develop potential medicines for challenging illnesses. And so we have about over 1,100 employees now, some of which have been here the entire 35 years, including our CEO. And we're taking this deep experience and expertise in developing RNA-targeted medicines and applying them to neurology. And so as you can see here, we have 3 approved medicines in neurology, so Spinraza, Qalsody, and Wainua. And we have multiple programs in development now. So all of those you see here listed below are for neurological indications, and they are currently in clinical trials, which is really, really exciting. And so throughout the development of ION 582, collaboration with the community has been key to advancing our Angelman syndrome research. And the common thread throughout all of this is listening and learning from families, starting with preclinical, when we wanted to better understand the illness, so we started research collaborations. We looked to understand the natural history and supported those studies. And then going on to early clinical development, where we started participating in consortia, continued to participate in the conferences, and that really helped us inform our clinical trial design. And now that we're here in late development, that collaboration continues with community advisor meetings, also participating in the community advisor boards, the Global Angelman Syndrome one. And again, throughout all of this, listening and learning from you to really inform how we design our trials and conduct our trials. We took this same rigorous and collaborative approach to developing ION 582, and that started with the breakthrough of identifying the biological target. So Ionis collaborated with a researcher, specifically Dr. Baudet, to identify the mechanism to upregulate UBE3A using an ASO. And from there, we continued to develop a deep understanding of the target biology, so collaborating with doctors and experts in Angelman syndrome biology and UBE3A to understand the target. Next came proof of concept in disease models, where we continued to collaborate with researchers, Dr. Baudet again, to show that an ASO provides benefit in preclinical models of Angelman syndrome. And then we leveraged our 30-plus years of experience in developing RNA-targeted medicines to screen candidates and identify ION 582 as our lead candidate for testing in clinical trials. And throughout this, we continued to develop a deep understanding of the syndrome. We're working closely with the community to understand their disease and to develop markers to monitor the trajectory of the disease that will help us in clinical trials, which is where we are today, evaluating ION 582 in our phase 3 REVEAL study. So just a bit more about ION 582 before I get into the program update and some of the data I'll share with you today. You've already heard a lot about this, but just briefly, on the left, you see a cartoon of Angelman syndrome neuron, and in pink, you have the UBE3A gene from mom, which is in Angelman syndrome, as you all know, loss of the maternal UBE3A gene is present, so it's either through deletion or mutation. And in all people, the paternal allele is silenced, and that's by the antisense transcript. And Ion 582 is designed to specifically target that antisense transcript so that it can be unsilenced and it can produce UBE3A protein. And so before I get into the data and some updates on our trials, I just wanted a couple of reminders that HALOS, that's our phase 1/2 study. It is a small open-label clinical trial. It was not designed to establish the safety or efficacy of Ion 582 as a treatment for Angelman syndrome. But the results are overall very encouraging, and they serve as the basis for our phase 3 trial, which is known as REVEAL, which is ongoing now. And that will determine the safety and efficacy of Ion 582. And so we'll present some initial results from HALOS only today, that's the phase 1/2 study, and some newer data from our long-term extension. So this is a brief overview of our clinical trials that are currently ongoing for Ion 582. So on the left, you have HALOS, which is our phase 1/2 global open label study. It was designed to evaluate the safety and tolerability of Ion 582 and also some exploratory measures of clinical efficacy. The trial includes participants with deletion or mutation genotypes, and so far we have 55 participants in the study aged 2 to 50 years old. The multiple ascending dose portion of the study is complete. We evaluated 3 doses of Ion 582, so 20, 40, and 80 milligrams. And the long-term extension is ongoing. So we have the participants that have completed the MAD are eligible, and they'll receive either 40 milligrams or 80 milligrams of Ion 582 for up to an additional 4 years. And we're excited to say that we started enrolling participants under the age of 2 this year, so we amended the protocol to add that, and we dosed our first under 2-year-old participant in September, which is very exciting. Very happy to hear that too. And so now I'll move on to REVEAL. That is our phase 3 global placebo-controlled study. And it's designed to demonstrate the safety and efficacy of Ion 582 in children and adults with Angelman syndrome. So this trial also includes participants with deletion or mutation genotypes, and they are also aged 2 to 50 years old. Our primary objective for the study is to evaluate if Ion 582 helps participants improve expressive communication, so that's the use of sounds, gestures, and ways to communicate using the Bailey-IV assessment. We dosed our first participant in June, which was very exciting, and the study is now approved in the US, Canada, UK, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, and Australia. And at the time of finalizing these slides, which was about a week ago, we had 9 sites activated in the US, and now I'm excited to say that we have an additional 4 sites activated, 1 in the US, 1 in the UK, 1 in Canada, and 1 in Australia. So things are moving along really nicely, and we're excited to now have some global sites involved, and we'll continue to open more sites throughout the end of the year and globally. So I'll give you a brief update on our HALOS phase 1/2 study, like where we are today with it. And so as I mentioned, the participants in ages 2 to 55, we've completed enrollment there. They've completed the MAD portion. 98% transitioned over to the long-term extension, where all participants are receiving Ion 582 every 12 weeks. And the long-term extension will last for about 4 years. And on average, participants have now received Ion 582 for about 2 years, and for some up to 3 years. So now we're able to get that long-term data to characterize Ion 582. And as I noted, we have started enrolling participants under the age of 2, so that those cohorts are open for enrollment. Participants that are included in the study will have either a deletion or mutation of UBE3A. And all will receive, it is open label, so all participants will receive Ion 582 every 12 weeks. And they'll receive it for about approximately 4 years, and there'll be about up to 15 participants in this age group. As I mentioned, we dosed our first participant in September, and we currently are enrolling at sites in the US, EU, and Israel. So I'd like to share a little data on the Bailey-IV expressive communication from our HALOS study. But before I do that, I just wanted to briefly talk about the Bailey. And I know you've all heard a bit about it over the past few days. There's been some great presentations on it. But so just briefly, the Bailey-IV measures a few different domains. It looks at language and communication through expressive communication and receptive communication. It also looks at cognitive function, so learning, memory, and concept formation. And it also assesses motor function, so fine motor, so reaching, object manipulation and grasping, and also gross motor, so locomotion and coordination and balance. So I'll talk a little bit more about expressive communication because I'll show you some data on that. And so what does it evaluate? It evaluates how your child communicates with others through sounds, gestures, words, and other ways of expressing themselves. The assessment is performed in the clinic, and the clinician will talk or play with your child to see how they respond. And they'll observe how your child uses gestures or vocalizations to get attention or show interest. And it'll look for signs that your child understands how communication works, even if spoken words aren't used yet. And so this is our data from the long-term extension portion of our study from our HALOS phase 1-2 study. And this is looking at expressive communication on the Bayley-4. And what we're seeing is continued improvement in expressive communication through 18 months across all ages and all genotypes. So what the chart is showing you is participants that have been treated with Ion 582, and that's the pink line. And then it's also showing patients that have participated in a natural history study. So this is what you would expect, that's sort of the typical developing trajectory for expressive communication in individuals living with Angelman syndrome. On the y-axis, you're seeing the mean change from baseline in expressive communication on the GSV score. That's the growth scale value. And that's a score that allows clinicians to look at how your child is developing over time, how their communication skills are changing over time in this case. And what we see are improvements on the Bayley-4 measure of expressive communication at both 40 milligrams and 80 milligrams. So those doses are pooled here in that pink line. All these individual participants received either 40 or 80, and that exceed the natural history. So that's very encouraging and great support for continuing our exploration in our phase 3 study. I'll also show you some EEG data that was presented earlier this week at the ABOM translational research meeting by my colleague, Ionis. But first, I'll get into just a little bit on what an EEG is. Again, you've heard about this weekend too, and a lot of you are probably already familiar with it. But it's a non-invasive procedure where 20 electrodes, so the small metal discs, are secured to the scalp while the individual is awake, and there's no medical risks associated with the procedure. It detects electrical activity from the brain, so the brain cells produce small electrical charges, and those can be detected at the level of the scalp, and they produce waves of electrical activity, as you can see there. And it's used to evaluate brain function. So EEG data that was collected in the HALOS phase 1-2 study provides more information about brain wave patterns in the individuals with Angelman syndrome in the study. And research has shown that EEGs are abnormal in Angelman syndrome. So on the left, you see what you would typically see in a neurotypical individual on an EEG when they're awake. And then on the right is what you see from an Angelman syndrome participant. Oops, sorry. And so you see more activity. In this case, you're seeing more activity in delta waves, or delta activity. It's also called delta power. And so delta power has been shown to correlate with cognitive function in Angelman syndrome. So therefore, it may serve as a biomarker for treatment response in clinical trials. And what we're seeing is that Ion 582 demonstrates delta suppression at 40 and 80 milligrams levels. And so the chart on the left, what that's showing you is the green line is the 20 milligram dose. So this is during the multiple ascending dose portion, the first part of our study, the first 6 months. And then in blue, you're seeing participants that were treated with either 40 or 80 milligrams. And on the y-axis, you have the EEG delta power change from baseline, and then you have time on the x-axis. And what we're seeing is, really the key takeaways are that we're seeing robust delta power suppression, so lowering of that delta activity at month 6. And we're seeing similar reductions for both the 40 and the 80 milligram groups. But we don't see any effect at the 20 milligram, which we did not take that dose forward into our long-term extension. So in conclusion, with where we are today with HALOS, so participants have received on average 2 years of treatment with Ion 582 and up to 3, so we're getting that nice long-term data to be able to characterize Ion 582 safety and potential efficacy. We're seeing a similar reduction in EEG delta power at 40 milligrams and 80 milligrams of Ion 582. And the expressive communication data indicate improvement through 18 months in both children and adults receiving 40 milligrams or 80 milligrams of Ion 582. And we plan to publish our HALOS 18-month data next year. So now I'll move on to REVEAL, which is our global phase 3 trial for children and adults with Angelman syndrome. So trial participants will be included if they have a mutation or a deletion of UBE3A. And it will include, similar to the HALO study, children and adults ages 2 to 50. It is a double-blind, placebo-controlled study, and participants will receive a dose every 3 months. And our trial objectives are here, and the primary objective is to evaluate the effect of ION582 on expressive communication through using the Bayley-4. And importantly, we've included other objectives as well, because we want to look at the totality of the evidence to fully characterize how ION582 may improve the lives of individuals living with Angelman syndrome and their families. So we're also looking at cognition, so learning and memory, receptive communication, that's the ability to understand others, overall disease severity, sleep problems, motor function, as well as daily living skills. And so the study team and the investigator at the site will closely monitor safety, but we also do have an independent board of physicians that will monitor safety as well. The trial is currently enrolling. It is a global study, and as I mentioned a week ago, we had 9 sites in the US. Now we have 10, also with 1 in Australia, the UK, and Canada. And so we'll continue to activate sites around the world, and as they are getting close to activation or activated, we will post those sites on clinicaltrials.gov so you can see if there's a trial site near you. The trial will last about 3.5 years. So there are 2 parts of the trial. The first part is the double-blind placebo-controlled treatment period. And so participants will receive ION582 or placebo. And then there's a 2-year long-term extension where everyone receives ION582. And the feedback that we've received from you, from the community, from the families, that's really what's guided us in how we've selected endpoints in our clinical trial. And I think this is really well demonstrated by the ASF FAST survey from the Angelman syndrome externally led PFDD meeting in April. And there, the top 3 symptom domains having the most impact on individuals was surveyed, and what came out is that communication really matters to families and living with Angelman syndrome. And so that is our primary. We've chosen expressive communication as our primary endpoint, but again, importantly, we have several secondary endpoints that are assessing many of these symptom domains here because we really recognize that it is the totality of the evidence. We want to understand how ION582 may help individuals living with Angelman syndrome across multiple domains so that we can hopefully provide a treatment that really improves their lives and the lives of families. So what would participation in REVEAL look like? It starts with a screening period. So you heard a little bit about this earlier, and where the eligibility criteria will be assessed. And then if the participant is eligible, then they'll move into the double-blind placebo-controlled treatment period. And so during this time, there will be 9 in-person clinic visits during screening and the double-blind treatment period, and 5 doses of ION582 or placebo. And the little checklists you see there are when the assessments will be performed, so they're performed about every 6 months. From there, participants will seamlessly transition to the long-term extension where all participants will receive ION582 for another 4 years. And this is followed by a follow-up period of about 8 months. So during the long-term extension and the follow-up period, there are 14 in-person clinic visits, and participants will receive 9 doses of ION582. And we're very excited today that we can announce that we'll be starting a phase 3 study in individuals with Angelman syndrome and genetic diagnosis of uniparental disomy or imprinting defects, so UPD or ID, and we're planning to start that study next year. So very excited. And this will be known as the Champion Study, and we'll plan to include children and adults with UPD or ID. And again, we're planning to start the study next year, so very happy to share that today. So in summary, our REVEAL, our pivotal phase 3 study is ongoing. It is on track to complete enrollment next year, so very excited about that. Our open label HALOS phase 1/2 study is also ongoing, so we're continuing to generate that long-term data. And also we're currently enrolling participants under the age of 2 as well, and that's at sites in the US, EU, and Israel. And as I just mentioned, we're initiating the UPD ID study next year, and we're advancing this study with input from FAST, ASF, the Hope and Action Survey, and also a caregiver advisory board so we can get your input into how we design and conduct our trial, because it's very important to us. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here today.
You heard us loud and clear. So this is why these meetings matter, because the sponsors hear your voice. And we all have been saying for years that we need to include all genotypes, and here we are. So this is very, very exciting for our community.